All right. So I'm Kelsey. I'm sure if any of you are Voces users, you have talked to me or heard my voice or read my emails. I am sort of the main or lead of our customer service team here at Voces. You've, I'm sure, also heard from David. You've heard from Andrew, Neil, Chris, all of us if you've called or emailed. And we really do appreciate supporting our teachers and that we have the ability to do that. So in this session, we are going to talk a little bit about assigning and grading within Voces. I know we've had a lot of talk about V4 this week and things that have changed. I will say assigning and grading is going to be very similar to how it has been in the past years. So we're going to go over it, look at what things maybe have changed, like where to click and all of that. But I'm going to go through, show you how to assign a couple of pages to your students. We'll see what grades look like from the teacher's point of view. And we will look at things like how to reset student work and how to organize your assignments. If you do have any questions, definitely pop them into the chat, or you can go ahead and unmute and ask if we're at like a breaking point. Chris is going to be keeping an eye on the chat. I'm sure everyone else will be as well. And so they'll let me know if there are any questions or places that I should go back. I do see one question already if we need to have student accounts for this. You would need student accounts to assign and for your students to log in and complete the activities. However, each subscription, your teacher subscription, even if you go with that teacher only, does include 10 student licenses. So if you have a small group or you have a group that you is maybe a little more advanced or needs a little extra practice, you could always try it out with a few students as well. So when we're logged in, and actually I'm going to go back to the dashboard. We'll start right from the beginning. So when you first log into Voces, you now log in and you see your dashboard here with your recent books and available books on the right. I'm going to be using Nuestra Historia 1 just because that's where I have all my student examples and I've done some work as students in that title. But everything that we're seeing today is applicable to any language, any level, really any title within the Voces library. So we're going to go ahead and click into Nuestra Historia 1. And we'll see, of course, I'm just going to open, I will always land on the page that I last had open. And we're not going to talk too much about navigating, but just as a little touch before we jump into assigning, to open the directory, just click this icon here, the little hamburger icon. And this is sort of where you would go if you weren't sure what pages you were assigning yet, or if you wanted to look over the content before assigning. And I always, when I talk about assigning, like to talk about two of the icons we see in the directory, and I'm going to talk a little bit about one new icon. So first of all, if we're looking at the directory, any activity with this orange circle with the lightning bolt, those activities are going to be automatically graded. That's useful for a few things. First of all, if you know, I just want to get a quick assignment out to my students, I want to, them to complete it quickly. These are typically going to be your multiple choice, fill in the blank, matching, sorting, all of those really very objective activities, right? There's a right answer, there's a wrong answer. Any activity without that icon, for example, activity 4 here, these are typically going to be our writing and our speaking activities. So here, the students are actually rewriting the story. So here's where it becomes a little more subjective. One student may write it one way, another may write it a different way, but both are right. So these are going to be graded by the teacher. And in just a few minutes, we're going to look at where we grade that, what that grading looks like, all that good stuff. The other icon I always like to talk a little bit about is the apple. So these pages are hidden from students. That means that they're teacher only. A good example and an example I usually like to use are the IPAs here at the end of the unit, the assessments. So as a student, if I log in, I won't be able to see that assessment in my directory at all. I'll only be able to see the pages within this section if they are assigned by the teacher or if you edit and remove the teacher only aspect. But for assessments, I would always recommend using the assignment tool. And we'll talk more about editing later on today. At 1 o'clock, I'll have a session on editing and how to change that, all that good stuff as well. Now, we do have the little mountain icon that shows us there's a can do statement on the page. That one's not as crucial when it comes to assigning, but just so you're aware, that does mean that there's a can do statement. Now, the new icon that you probably haven't seen before is this little green piece of paper. That is the assigned icon. So when I'm looking at my directory, I can see that these pages have been assigned to at least one of my classes. That's, again, something new with V4. I'm very excited about it. I think it's going to be a nice little organizational tool, especially, the next day, maybe we're going over it together in class, might help you find it a little bit easier. All right. So I'm going to jump into the assignment tool now. Were there any questions that needed to be answered from the chat?
Um, there's a question about anti-cheat,
Mm,
anti-AI translator, but I'm thinking you'll get to that as you're going through assignments.
yes,
So
yeah, yep. That'll be in the assignment settings, and we're headed there now.
So in addition to the ones in assignment settings, just if you
Hmm.
don't mind me touching on them
I
real
will.
quick, we have it blocked where students cannot copy anything that is in Voces. So when logged in as a student, if they try to copy text on the page, it won't copy out. They also can't paste into any text boxes that are inside of Voces. So even if they do go over to Google Translate and type something in, they will have to retype it into Voces. And I know they've got ways with their phones of taking pictures that gets around the copy pasting out. Um, but I can't stop them from holding their phone in their hand. Um, so that's just one of the things that we've put in place. And then Kelsey will touch on some others in the assignment tools.
Yeah, definitely. Google Translate, the whole page, I believe Google Translates.
It's disabled. We've got that disabled through code, so Google Translate should not come up as an option. There are other browser plugins that um, we can't necessarily block because they happen above the web page, but those should be blockable by the school admin so that the students can't even install those plugins.
Yep. And yes, Martha, we do still have the option for don't leave the page. So we're going to go through creating an assignment, and we'll talk about all those different options. So to create an assignment, we'll start from the assignments tool here at the top. This is also where students will click to go and access their assignments. So everything that has to do with assignments is under assignments. Just really quickly want to touch on the assignment view. So we do have the list that we're looking at now. You can also look at a calendar view as the teacher. So if you want to see, what do I have today, next week, whatever it is, you can do that. List view is definitely, I mean, it's my preference. I like looking at things in a list. So I think it can be a little bit easier to manage your folders and things like that from the list. Within the assignments portal, we'll see here at the top class visibility. Now, I only have one class at the moment, but if you have several, you can check and uncheck the boxes. So if you only want to see assignments for your first hour class or your honors class, however you have your classrooms organized, you can check and uncheck those boxes. Now, under folders and assignments, one thing that is a little bit newer, added last year, but we can expand all folders. This is really helpful if you say, hey, I know I created this assignment. Now I can't find it in the folder I thought it was in. Clicking expand all folders. And then a trick I like to use is Control F, which is the find. And then you can type, I'm just going to type activity.1. You can type whatever, a keyword from that assignment. It'll help you find it pretty easily. Pardon me. And then within the folder, you do have options here if you choose to put your assignments in a folder. So we'll look at that too in just a moment, but you can use the folders or not use them. I think most teachers use them, and I recommend it because you can do, as I have it here, Unit 1, Story 1, the IPA, or you can do it by week. I have some teachers do it just by the whole unit. But it just sort of helps you organize for yourself where those assignments are. And there's some other features. For example, if you have activities within a folder, here under folder controls, you can actually set it so the students have to complete the assignments in the order that they're listed. So that's this icon here. Mine's green, so that means right now my students have to complete activity 1 first. Once they complete it, they can move on to activity 2, so on and so forth. Now, if I wanted them to do activity 3 first, I can also click and drag and put that up at the top. So now they have to do activity 3 first and then move on through the rest. Just clicking that icon again will turn that off. So if it's gray, they can do them in any order. If it's green, they have to be in the right order. You can also bulk edit the activities or the assignments within this folder. So we'll talk about editing assignments a little more in a minute as well, but this will let you edit all of the assignments in that folder at once. So that's another reason teachers really like folders, because you can make changes to everything within that folder. Now we're going to look at a new assignment, then we'll come back to this screen and talk about editing assignments, resetting student work, and a few other features. But for now, we're going to go through the process of creating that new assignment. So I bet you can all guess, but when we're ready for a new assignment, we're going to click the New Assignments button here at the top. From here, we can do two things. We can assign the current page or different pages. So I'm going to choose different pages for now, but I do also work with a lot of teachers who like assigning the current page. They're looking at it, they know what they want to assign. So that'll take you through the rest of the steps and assign the page we were looking at when we opened the assignments portal. So we'll go ahead and click next. Now we're going to choose which page or pages to assign. That's the other benefit of using other pages instead of current page is I can open a unit, a story, or a chapter, whichever title, however we're working, and I can choose multiple activities within that section to assign to my students. As you click on the activity, it's going to turn green. That lets you know that it's selected. And then scrolling down to the bottom, you'll also see selected pages listed. So it'll show you before you go on to the next step, you can kind of make sure, okay, I have everything selected that I want. Again, we're going to click next. So this is called the new assignment wizard that we're in right now. And so with any wizard, quote unquote, you're just going to go through each step. So it's going to walk you right through it. So we're always just hitting next until we get to a button that says create assignment. So I always like to tell my teachers, don't stop until you see create assignment. Just keep going. Now on this step, we're selecting classes or students to assign these pages to. Of course, clicking the full class option is going to assign it to every student in that class. Clicking specific students will let me choose certain students in that class to assign it to. A tip I always give here is that you need to have some green. So you can see right now, this is just lit up blue and it's got this 0 next to it. That means I haven't selected any students. I'm not assigning this to anyone unless I click and turn those names green. If I click full class, that's green. So a good tip when we're choosing who to assign to, we've got to have a little bit of green on the screen. Again, we'll go ahead and click next. Now we're choosing, do we want to put the assignment in a folder? No folder, I can choose an existing folder or create a new one. For this, I'm going to go ahead and create a new folder and I'll call it Unit 3. Don't remember if it was Story 1, but that's what we're going to call the folder for now. And then when I click next, it's going to create that folder and the assignments will be in that folder. On the next step, we're now choosing the dates. Start date is just what it sounds like. It's when the students can start the assignment. Immediate is going to open this assignment. They'll see it within Voces immediately once you create it. Available on is setting that future start date. So let's say maybe I want this. I'm planning for next week. I'm going to have the start date be August 4th. As it is, the students will not see this assignment in their assignment list until August 4th. The exception is, of course, if I click this button here, if I check the box, Now the students will see that they have an assignment coming on August 4th, but they still won't be able to open it or see the content on that page. This is really useful for your assessments, your quizzes. You want them to know what's coming, but you don't want them to know what the content is. So I see a lot of teachers use that future start date but show assignment on their assessments and quizzes. Now, due date, of course, due date is when is the assignment due. It has to be after the start date. So I've got to change that, of course, and I'm going to change that to the 6th. So now it's due August 6th. The next thing we'll choose is how strict that due date is. So our hard deadline, no late submissions are accepted. Soft deadline is the default. This one is the most forgiving, but still gives you a little bit of control. So with the soft deadline, when I create my assignment, students will have a set number of attempts, and we're going to set that on the next step. But let's say I've given the students 3 attempts at an activity. With that soft deadline, they can turn in the assignment after, in this case, August 6th at 11:55 p.m. So they can turn it in after the due date if that's their first attempt. So if they've already done 2 attempts before the due date, they cannot submit that third attempt after the due date. And that's really to prevent students from, going over the activity with you in class and then using that last attempt after the due date. So soft deadline, they can submit late if it's their first attempt at the activity. Open-ended is they can submit late even if that's not their first attempt. So I see open-ended used a lot with maybe like presentational speaking, or if we're writing out a few paragraphs, because we want them to turn it into us on a certain date. But then we maybe are giving them feedback and we want them to go back and apply that feedback to the activity. So that lets them resubmit after the due date. So that's the big difference there. Of course, either one, it's always changeable. You can always edit and make changes to what you've chosen, but soft deadline is going to be the most common. I would say open-ended is the next. And then hard deadline is just when you really are saying, I am not accepting a single late assignment on this one. We're going to just leave it as soft, and we'll go ahead and click next. Now we're on the assignment options. And I will probably, I'm going to go back. Bear with me here because I should have chosen a recording activity as well. So bear with me here just a minute. Pardon me. I'm so sorry. I know I'm a little bit under the weather. And so I'm just having
If
a
you want a
lot.
recording one, doing extra and
Yeah.
the the
Mundo.
Almundos.
Perfect.
That's what I do anytime I need to test recording.
Yeah. All right. So unit use for one. Oops, not 32. That would be way too many units. All right, so now we're on the assignment options. I went back and did that because there are some options that only apply to recording activities, and I wanted to make sure we saw all of them today. So a few of these are, things I'm sure you've seen before, you've used in your classroom, but these are just different ways we can make the assignment either more formal or sometimes even less formal. First is going to be the point value. So by default, every activity in Voces has a point value of 1 point per question, meaning if there's an activity with 7 questions on the page and it's points graded, that activity is worth 7 points. Now, maybe I want to make it worth 10 points. So I can choose modified point value and say, I want each of these activities to be worth 10 points. So in this case, it would be a total of 40 points because there are 4 different activities. So it's setting that per page. I can also choose credit or no credit. So of course, that means if they turn it in, it's going to give them full credit. If they don't turn it in, they didn't turn it in. Next is that submission limit. Again, this is pretty self-explanatory, but it just limits the attempts students have at an activity. Prevent leaving, this is the one that was asked about earlier. So prevent leaving is one of those anti-cheating measures that we have in place. This will give the students first a warning if they leave the page, And then depending on our maximum warnings, we'll automatically submit the work to the teacher. So as I have it now, maximum warnings 1. So if the student leaves the page, when they come back to Voces, they'll get a warning that says, don't leave the page. If you leave the page again, your work's going to get submitted to your teacher. If they leave again, they come back, the work is auto submitted to the teacher, whether they've completed the page or not. So on things like assessments, if we have a submission limit of 1 and prevent leaving, if they leave more than one time, then that work is auto submitted. They won't be able to attempt the activity again. So that's a combination I do see a lot on, again, assessments, quizzes, things that are a little more of a formal score. We can use that submission limit and the prevent leaving to sort of lock them into the page.
I'm going to jump in with
Yes.
one extra comment on prevent leaving. Um, if you're going to use it, I suggest if you're going to use it for a test or something like that, I suggest using it for something a little, I guess, less important with students prior to that, because it is very touchy. If they change the volume on their device or click a pop-up that comes up down on their toolbar, it will count as leaving the page. Anything they do outside of that Voces window counts. So they just need to know. And if it's set to that, there's a button to start the page. So the students just need to know, adjust your volume, do all of those other things you have to do before you press start, because once you've started it, you can't click any of the other stuff.
Right. And I'm going to also show a really easy way to reset student work once we are through this. So if you do have a student and you know that they were not leaving on purpose, they had a pop up, they had that volume change, there is a pretty simple way to get them another extra attempt. So it will reset their work, but I'll show you how to do that here in just a few minutes as well. Awesome. So the next setting, single record, this one, of course, only applies to those activities where students are recording their voice. So this will basically, it's like the submission limit, but it limits the students to recording their voice only one time. If it's like an interpersonal activity where they're recording more than once on the page, it's once per recording. So it will let them record once for each question. The next one is automated recording. This one I think I get the most questions about this, but this is a setting that allows us to take, for the most part, I see this used with interpersonal speaking tasks rather than presentational, but you can use it with both. So with interpersonal, there are activities within Voces where the students are listening to audio, then responding to that audio, then listening to another audio, then responding, so on and so forth. So like a conversation. There are other recording activities where students are reading a prompt, hearing a prompt, looking at an image, and then recording more of a presentational speaking. So that usually there's only one record button on those types of pages. So that was just a little background so we know the difference between interpersonal and presentational on the page. With automated recording, if we have that interpersonal, so we're listening and then speaking, what will happen is the students will get a message to start the activity. Once they click start, it waits a couple seconds and then starts playing that first audio automatically. When that audio finishes playing, the record button is automatically pressed and starts recording the student's voice. The students do still have control over the stop recording button. So once they hit stop and they're done recording, the next audio will play, then that will record, so on and so forth down the page. This is used a lot when we're practicing for like the conversation portion of the AP exam, or if we're just practicing, maybe we just want to practice the conversation and make it feel a little more real. It just sort of gives, not really pressure, but it just gives a little bit more of that feeling of we're really listening to someone. And when we stop talking, they're going to start talking again. So I think a lot of teachers like it for those interpersonal tasks on the IPAs or on the exams. That's where I see it used the most. Now, if it's a presentational task, once the students hit start, it will start recording them. I think it's about 30 seconds, maybe 1 minute, I believe it says here. So if it's presentational, they're looking at a prompt or they're looking at an image, they'll have about 60 seconds and then the recording will automatically start. You can also hide the next records, so it will hide those from the student before they start the page. Now, next up are the timers. So timers, of course, we didn't reinvent the wheel here, but we have both a max and minimum timer. The maximum timer, if you set this to, in this example, 10 minutes, then after 10 minutes, the student's work will be submitted to you. Again, they have a start button, so they know that the timer has started. The timer actually stays there at the top of the page, so they know how much time they have to complete it. But once that max timer is hit, it's going to submit the work. The minimum timer we see used a lot with videos or even multiple choice activities where you want to sort of slow them down a little bit. So with the minimum timer, the submit button doesn't show up and the students aren't able to submit the work until that amount of time has passed. So again, we've got 10 minutes here. So they won't be able to submit the work until they've been on the page for 10 minutes. Next is the recording timer. Now, by default, students can record for pretty much as long as they'd like on each recording. I'm sure there is some upward limit, but it's not one that I've seen students meet recently. It used to be a little bit lower, but it's quite high now. So this will limit the amount of time they can speak on each recording. Again, I see this a lot with conversational activities, those interpersonal, maybe 20 or 30 seconds. It's also useful just if you have 125 students and you don't want to listen to them each speak for 5 minutes, you could set, a 60-second maximum time. So we've got 1 minute, and of course you would let them know that, but you can limit the amount of time they can speak. The next option is requiring a set percentage. This is setting a minimum passing requirement, basically. So if I set this to 100% as it is here, the students will have to complete the activity until they reach 100% score. Now we can go as low as 60 and anywhere in between in increments of 5. My one note here is if you're using a required percentage, I would not have a submission limit on the page because what will happen is if we've got a submission limit of 3 and it takes them more than 3 attempts, they'll have this assignment listed as outstanding. It's something they need to complete, but they won't be able to submit again because we have that limit. So the required set percentage I see used a lot on practice activities. If we want to use something as sort of that mastery type of activity where we're doing it over and over, we're sort of doing it like more of a drill. I see that used a lot for that. Or I see it used a lot at the lower end, that's 60, 70% to say, you've got to try it until you pass. You can't get less than 60. Let's keep going until we pass the activity. And then a lot of teachers use clear on retake with that set percentage, but you can use it with or without. Clear on retake basically just means that when the student loads the page, it's going to load a blank, clean assignment each time. So if we, again, have 3 or 4 attempts, if I have clear on retake set, then each time it's going to be as if they're starting the assignment for the first time. So that's really useful if we don't want students just saying, oh, I got number 3 wrong, let me keep trying number 3. I see it used a lot on true or false activities, multiple choice, so they can't just guess over and over until they get it right. They actually do have to complete the whole activity each time.
And it does show them what their score is before it clears out. So it'll say you got 3 out of 7, and they can choose whether they want to start it again, which clears out their answers, or if they're content with their 3 out of 7. So they do have an idea of if they need to keep retaking it, at least if it's auto graded.
Yeah. So then the last one, allow review. This one, again, I feel like we do get a good number of questions about it just because reviewing, of course, is different in every classroom and with every activity. But this is setting when students can see their scores, what they got wrong, as well as if they can see the correct answers or not. The default is immediately after submission. So as Chris just mentioned, on automatically graded activities, students will see their score and which questions they got wrong right away. Now, if it's teacher graded, like a speaking or writing, they won't see it until you grade it because, of course, you have to grade it first. But with everything else, they will see that score right away. After due date has passed is another popular one. So this one, students won't see what questions they got right or wrong until the due date has gone by. And Chris, would you mind reminding me, can they see their total score before the due date?
No, I don't think they see
Okay,
any results until after the due date.
perfect. So yep, so they won't know their score, they won't know which questions they got right or wrong until after the due date. I see that.
Laura's saying they do see their score. So, uh, Laura, is that when it's set to after the due date has passed, or just you usually leave it as immediately after?
I always leave it as teacher controlled, not yet. And my students can check their score by going back to like as if they were going to take the test, and it'll show them their score, but they won't get to see the
The
questions and
results.
answers
Okay.
Right.
because my kids cheat a lot.
Yeah.
And I know how to stop it.
I
Yep.
feel like you
That's
could have left my out of that sentence.
right.
Yeah, that's
That's what
true.
that's why I wasn't sure if it did that with the due date one as well. But yes, so with teacher controlled, they will see their total score. So they'll see you got, 7 out of 10 points on this activity. But as Laura mentioned, they won't be able to see which questions they got wrong, so they can't go and share that information with each other. So we're going to see in just a few minutes too how to turn on that review when we choose teacher controlled. So we're going to choose that setting for this example. But yes, teacher controlled not yet means they cannot review their responses to each individual question until we open that review up. And then of course, clicking show correct answers will show the answer key for the activity when the students are able to review. So the correct answers will follow whatever we have set here. If I'm showing the correct answers, students will not be able to resubmit. So even if, let's say I have immediately after and show correct answers, and the activity has 5 attempts available. If the students complete it once and see those correct answers, they cannot adjust their answers while the correct answers are showing. So just something to keep in mind as we're creating the assignment is sort of how do I want my students to be able to interact with this activity both before they've done it the first time and after they've done it one time. And just sort of keeping in mind how these things might interact with each other, but also knowing that we can always edit and change the settings. You can always email or call us if you are trying to set up an assessment and you're thinking, gosh, I just don't know which settings to choose. I'm a little bit lost here, but I know this is the outcome I want. Call us, email us. We'll be more than happy to give suggestions on which settings we would recommend for that desired outcome. Now we've just got one more really quick step in the assignment process, but before I go into that, are there any other questions about assignment settings?
There was just a question in chat about seeing it, seeing what the students see, and I just shared a screenshot of that.
Beautiful. Yeah, I think we'll have a little bit of time here at the end, and I'll definitely be able to log in as a student. I want to make sure we touch on grading first, but yeah, we'll try to fit that
And
in for sure.
and there is a question about um, show correct. So with show correct, as soon as it is showing them the correct answers, we do have it where the submit button is removed, so they can't change their answers while they're seeing the correct answers. So even if they have multiple attempts, I suggest only setting that show correct answers once everybody's kind of done with the assignment and you're reviewing it.
Awesome. So then we're going to hit next one more time, which is going to take us to just reviewing all those details. So the very final step is just making sure everything looks right here. All right. So it's assigned to these students with this deadline. Now I can leave notes. So I might say, complete this and we'll go over it, whatever you want to write to your students. They'll see this note. And then the last step is that create assignment. So this is what I meant when I said just go, keep going, keep hitting next until you see this button, and you will successfully create the assignment. That's going to take us back to our assignment list. Now we see that Unit 3 Story 1 folder. And if I click on it, it'll show me all of those assignments that we just created. Now, in this one, remember, we did choose that the students, the teacher controlled review settings. So now my students have completed activity 1. I want to go over it. I want them to be able to see their results. So to do that, I'll find the assignment here in the list, click Edit Assignment, and that's going to open up the assignment settings. So we can change, like I said, anything that we had selected. So we can choose, to turn off clear on retake. We can choose to add a submission limit. Anything that we want to do that we just set up, we can change now. Now you'll see allow review. And when I click teacher controlled review now, that will open the review for the students. But just like with correct answers, they will not be able to submit. So when we have that manual review, when we're turning it on and off, they can't submit when we have the review open, even if we're not showing correct answers. Then one other thing here on the edit assignment page is that we can edit these details for a specific student. So let's say Ashley here was out of class that day. I can click edit student details next to her name, select a detail to change, and I can change the start date, the due date, submission limit, all of those settings that we just saw, and I can change those for one specific student. This is also helpful if you have a student maybe that has, they get a little bit of extra time on assessments, or maybe they get an extra day to complete assignments. Whatever it is, you can adjust all of those settings we just talked about on a student by student basis. The one thing I'll say is if you are linked to an LMS, those settings won't go over to the LMS for that specific student, but they will see them here in Voces. Then when you're done editing, just click Save Edit. And then again, it's going to take you right back to the list, and we'll be able to be back at the list. Now, before we jump into grading, there is a way to look at our student results here in assignments, sort of a quick view. So if I open this folder here, Unit 1, Historieta 1, and I'm going to just use this first activity. If I click View Results, that's going to show me who has completed and who has not completed the activity. It'll give me that quick, so this is how many points they got. They got 1 out of 5, 2 out of 5, 4 out of, again, whatever it is. And so those students that have completed it, if I click on that student name, then this edit screen will show up. I can change the due date. I can also reset that student activity. So this is the easiest way if we have that, like the auto submit, like they left the page or anything along those lines, we can reset this student activity very, very easily from the assignment list. Also, again, helpful if a student is out for the day or they missed an assessment, just a really quick and easy way to change the settings for that particular student. Yeah, clicking on a student who hasn't completed it will let me change that due date and deadline type, but you can see the reset is blocked out because there's nothing to reset. Awesome. Now, Chris, anything I missed that you would have talked about here on assigning before we jump into the grading?
Yeah, just one more spot, the bulk edit.
Oh,
So
yes.
in any folder, you can edit all of the assignments in that folder by hitting that bulk edit stack icon.
This one. I've
Yep.
heard it also described as coins. So stacks of coins.
Stacks of coins. I've heard pancakes.
Oh, I like
All
pancakes better.
depends if people are hungry or not. And so from in here, if you wanted to go in and change everything in Unit 1, Story 1, bump the due date because there was a snow day the day it was due. Um, you can do that very easily here and apply it to everything. I think that's all I would have mentioned.
Yep. And then, so yeah, apply to all here at the top will apply to everything. And then you can also edit,
Can
one
you
or two
go all the
individual.
way to the right, Kelsey? Is
Yeah.
show correct answer? Yep, show correct answers is there.
Yeah, you do have to slide over to the right a little bit to see some of them, but yep, everything that we saw. Yep. Awesome. All right, so now we'll jump into grading. Grading is, we all know what grading is. Obviously, we're grading our student work. So under Teachers Panel, we'll open up that grading tool. Now in here, there are 3 different sections. There's requires grading, activity results, and gradebook. Requires grading is everything that needs to be graded by the teacher. So here you can see my class is listed and I have 8 things to grade. If you have more than one class, there will be multiple classes here. I just have one just to keep it a little bit clean while we're looking at it here. Now, once I click the class name, it expands. So now I can see all 8 of the activities that I need to grade. So for now, I'm going to click this first one. This is going to give me, this one happens to be rubric graded. So with rubric grading, we're going to grade simply by clicking the rubric. We'll see the box turn green. That means I've given the student that score for that criteria. So I go through, I click, 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 and then it'll show me how many points and the percentage score. Here, and this is true for points and rubric graded activities here in requires grading. We're going to look at a points graded one as well, but you can make a point adjustment. So if you're a teacher who maybe takes off a point for being late, you can do a negative point adjustment, -1. Or if maybe they've gone well above and beyond, you could do a positive point adjustment, and you can type or use the arrows, decimals, the whole 9 yards. So you can really make those little adjustments to the score without trying to do the math and figure out, how do I do that with the tool? It's very simple with the point adjustment. Then here we can leave notes for the student. We might say, great job. We might say, remember to work on this pronunciation, work on this in writing, whatever it is. These notes will go to the student. And then you can also leave audio notes. So if I click initialize audio recording and then record audio feedback, this will let me record to the student. Again, maybe we want to give them an audio pronunciation of a word that they've gotten wrong, or we want to just even leave them feedback speaking in the target language, whatever it is. I think that audio feedback can be really powerful, especially if we're in a situation where maybe during the class we're not able to speak individually with each student as much as we'd like to. I think we all can agree we wish there was a little more time for that, right? That personal interaction. So I think this is a really great way to leave them a note in your voice, in the target language that they can listen to. Once you're done, if you click save, it's going to take that activity out of requires grading and move it into activity results. I've got 2 things I want to touch on here in requires grading, and then we'll go back into activity results. So the first is I did want to show a points graded activity here in requires grading. This one in particular was part auto graded and part teacher graded. So what I can see is that anything that was auto graded, any section on the page, is already graded. We already have the check marks or the X's for which ones are incorrect. I can see here that this one is suggested answers will vary. So that is the teacher graded activity on that page, or it's a teacher graded question. I can change the score, or I can mark it correct just by clicking the red X. I can also give half credit. So I can do 0.5. Again, just however your grading system is, we do have tools that allow you to do that. You can also leave notes on any points graded activity on each question. So that's one of the differences between rubric and points, is that you can leave those individual question notes with the points. So good job. And then again, we can adjust the points. We can leave our feedback, audio feedback, and save. The other thing we'll see here at the bottom is the clear requires grading list. Now, we will once in a while see automatically graded activities listed in requires grading. That's if they were turned in after a due date. So if we've got that soft deadline and a student turns in an assignment a day late, then what we'll have is it's going to show up here so that you as the teacher get that sort of notification that it's late. And so a lot of times teachers will want to just clear all of that out. We have the option here, clear late auto graded only. That will clear those out of this list and move them to activity results. You can also select any activity and do the same thing with it. Now, I see this used a lot if maybe after an assignment you say, I'm just going to go credit, no credit. If they turned it in, I'm giving them full credit. So to do that, you can choose an activity here and then mark all correct. We'll give them full credit for it. If I don't check that, it's just going to move those into activity results, but they still won't be graded. So down here, I can go ahead and just click grade all, and it's going to move. You can see I now have a little bit less to grade. The next section, activity results, this is going to house all activities that students have turned in, whether the computer graded them, whether you as the teacher have already graded them, or even if they're sitting and waiting and requires grading, you'll also be able to see them here. So you can see all student work under activity results. When you're looking at activity results, you'll first choose a class at the top that you want to view results for. Then we'll choose a section, a chapter, depending on the title. Some have units, some have chapters. So you'll just choose whichever page you want to view results for. Again, we'll have this little piece of paper icon that tells us that there's something in that section that we've assigned to our classes. So that's just helpful when you're trying to figure out, what section was it in, what chapter. You can use that assignment icon. Now, when I click on a specific activity, it's going to open up this view where I'm seeing which students have turned it in, the date they turned it in, how many questions they got correct, and how many points they have. I do get I get questions about the question value versus point value, pretty often. And so I always like to touch on that, is that this column is how many questions we had on the page and how many we got right. And then this is points. So again, by default, all activities within Voces, each question is worth 1 point. That can be adjusted. And of course, if we did a point modification on the assignment, that could affect that as well. So we've got 2 out of 7 questions correct, but if each of those questions were worth 2 points, then we would have 4 out of 14 points. So that's just the difference there.
And some of that's a bit of a relic from before we had points. For those of you who have been around for a long time, we used to not have points. It was just, did you get it right or wrong? And as we're looking at changes over the next year to roll out next summer for assigning and grading, we might be consolidating that down into 1 score instead of 2, as that does confuse students sometimes.
Thanks. So clicking on the student's name is going to open up, we'll see the question, the answer key, the student answer, and then again, those red X's and green checks. So most of what we see here, we already saw on the requires grading screen, right? So we can check, just click the X, even though this was auto graded, maybe I want to give credit for a question anyway. This one was multiple choice, so I probably wouldn't, but maybe it's fill in the blank and maybe they just had, a minor spelling error, or maybe they were so close and we want to give them half credit. You as the teacher ultimately have full control over the score, even on those auto graded activities. You can also click check all under marks, and that will mark everything on the page correct. Again, we've got that point adjustment, we've got page notes, audio notes that we can leave, and question specific notes. One thing I don't think I did mention was the time spent on page. You'll be able to see this for each student result, but I always like to remind teachers to keep in mind that it's the last visit to the page. So for example, if I'm a student and I go in and I complete an activity and I'm like working really hard on it, very proud of it, I turn it in, but the next morning I just say, oh my gosh, I can't remember if I turned that in. I can't remember if I did everything on the page. If I go back to the page and I submit again, then I may have only spent, 5 seconds on the page or 10 seconds on the page. So as a teacher, you're always going to be seeing the most recent visit. Students don't do that terribly often, but just something to keep in mind. If it's a really short amount of time, they probably went back to the page and double checked things. One other thing we have here in activity results is the option to grade by question. So that will open up each question on the page and show me the student results. This doesn't look quite right, does it, Chris?
No, I've been waiting. Every time you've clicked something, I've been anxiously watching to see what goes wrong with it.
Right.
And I've already got a note about grade by question not loading in correctly in my
Oh,
list of things to do. I should have warned you about that and told you not to click on it.
yeah.
But it's a good reminder that I need to fix that soon.
Good. So Chris will fix this, but how it should look is it should list the student name and student answer for each student in this class on this page. So once it's working in a couple of hours or days or whatever Chris gets to it, what you'll be able to do is see, like, um, is there a question that the majority of my students got wrong, or is there a question they all like knocked it out of the park on? And so it just gives you a little bit of a different view and another way of sort of measuring that student success. Um, the other couple of other things, we can reset all, which will reset the activity for all of the students listed in that class. Or if you have multiple classes selected, it'll do it for everyone. So whatever names are listed in that view, when you click reset all, it's going to reset it for everyone who's showing. I can also click on a student's name, scroll down, and reset for just that student. So there are a few places we can reset the student's work, but yeah, that's another one of them. All right. And then finally, the gradebook section. This is going to let me generate a grade report for specific parameters. So I might choose Unit 1. I'm going to choose my one active class, although I can also look at scores for my archived classes. I'm going to choose group by student. That's just going to show me for each student their scores. And then typically I do recommend removing blank entries. Um, it really just depends on what we're trying to see here. So removing blank entries will remove anything that doesn't have a score. You can also use only show assigned, which I also usually recommend. That's only going to show pages from that unit that I've assigned to my students. So only show assigned, remove blank are two that I often do recommend using. And then include summary. I like this one as well because it'll give me a summary line for each student. You can also choose to only show the summary. So if we're just doing a report at the end of a semester or at the end of a grading period, we can choose to just show that one summary. We can choose a specific date range or include our folders. So just things to sort of play around with as you're creating this report.
I fully
Then
expect that button to throw an error.
Nope. So once
Wow.
you click generate report, it's going to show you that report based on those that you selected. So I can see here for each activity what this student got correct. Again, number of questions and total points. So separate for now. And then that summary line that shows me the total number of questions correct, the total number of points, and those percentages as well. Now we can print or we can download this as a spreadsheet. If we're linked to an LMS, we'll also have the option here to sync to LMS. Didn't get into a lot of detail on LMS syncing in this session, just for time's sake. I didn't want to overload us, but you do have the option to link. And so if you've got questions about that, don't hesitate to reach out to us at info@vocesdigital.com. We'll be more than happy to explain a little bit of the differences, and for the most part, everything works the same. You just have some options on whether you want to sync your assignments to your LMS or not. So we can definitely go over that with anyone who needs to. Now we are right at the edge of the time, but I think we've still got a little bit of time for questions. Were there any I missed from the chat or any new questions?
I think I caught most of them. The Darlene wants to see the mark all correct.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's going to be under activity. Well, you could do it under either.
It's in requires grading as
Yeah,
well.
where the assignment is. Oh, mark everyone correct?
No, I think just the mark all correct on the one
Okay, yep.
activity. So yeah, if you open that and
Yeah, absolutely. So, yep. So you just choose, again, we're going into that unit, that section, and then I'm choosing the student, clicking on their name. And then under marks, you'll be able to click, it says check all. It's a little, but it's there. Check all, and that will mark them all correct.